Hey art historians, welcome back. We are still in Module 14, Contemporary Art Part 3 and Art Since 1980 Part 1. So that means that this is Art Since 1980 Part 1, 14.04, Art, Identity, and Representation. So for this unit, you've got 8 core works and 2 supplemental works. And so we are talking about some very modern pieces of art. And so what we are going to take a look at is Betty Saar's Liberation of Aunt Jemima, Judy Chicago's The Dinner Party, The Gorilla Girls, Do Women Have to Be Naked to Be in the Met, to Get Into the Met Museum? We've got Felix Gonzalez Torres's Untitled, Glenn Lingen's Untitled, I Feel Most Colored When I Am Thrown Against a Sharp White Background, Catherine Opie's Self-Portrait/Cutting, Wang Chi Mutu's The New Ones Will Free Us, and Simone Lee's Brick House. And then for your supplemental works, you're going to take a look at Letitia Parente's Marca Registrata and Glenn Lingon's I Am a Man. So let's start with a discussion about art, identity, and representation as the between 1945 and 1980, as the title of this unit suggests. We've got a couple of really important, kind of historical movements that are really kind of spearheading a lot of the themes that you're going to see in the artwork for this unit. So we have the Civil Rights Movement, which is happening in the 1950s and 60s, and this is sparking a surge in art that really addresses race, equality, and justice. And so this is inspiring artists like Betty Saar to challenge these racial stereotypes. In the 60s and 80s, we've got a second wave feminism where artists like Judy Chicago are exploring gender inequality and creating feminist art that really celebrates the women's experience in history. Post-colonialism is also sort of in the mix here as artists are beginning to critique colonial histories and cultural erasure. They're really fostering themes of cultural pride and reclamation. And of course, we have the Stonewall riots and the LGBTQ plus rights in 1969, where we have increased visibility of LGBTQ plus identities, and that is really influencing later artists through, though the groundwork for representation is really very much beginning in this time frame. Now, a couple of other things that are happening, we've also got the feminist art movement, where artists like Judy Chicago are emphasizing the inclusion of women's voices in art, very much challenging male-dominated narratives. We've also got the Black arts movement of the 60s and 70s, which is aiming to create a distinct Black cultural aesthetic with artists like Betty Saar and others producing work that honor African heritage and critique systematic racism. Identity politics is very important in this time frame. Artists are increasingly exploring the intersections of race, gender, sexuality, and class, and they really want to challenge the dominant cultural narratives that existed before this time frame. Many artists are also getting very personal and political in the messages behind their artwork as they link these personal experiences to broader political and social issues, making art an actual tool for activism and to express their opinions about these issues in society. We are also seeing a little bit more mixed media and assemblage. Artists like Betty Saar are incorporating found objects to challenge these stereotypes and invoke cultural memory. A lot of collaboration in guerrilla art is happening as groups like the Gorilla Girls, formed in 1985, inspired by earlier activism, as they're using humor and really bold and in-your-face visuals to critique sexism and racism that's really, really present in the art world at this time frame, and honestly still continues to be so. We are also getting to see a little bit more of this sense of visibility and inclusion for all different kinds of groups. And so what we're actually getting to see now is the advocacy for marginalized groups to be represented in galleries, museums, and art histories. So that way no one is left out of the scene. This is a really important movement because I think art is something that is accessible to all, and something like this process of creating more visibility for all different walks of life is very, very important to having a well-rounded sense of art within the museum space. Their artists, of course, are challenging stereotypes. Artists are using their work to subvert harmful depictions of race, gender, and sexuality. Artists are feeling very empowered, and they're celebrating as many pieces are that are being created celebrate cultural heritage, identity, as well as the resilience of these underrepresented communities. And so some of the art some of the artists that you're going to see. As I mentioned, Judy Chicago. She's a pioneer of feminist art. The dinner party is really symbolizing the achievements of women throughout history. It is a pretty amazing piece, and very thought-provoking. It makes you really, really consider all of the incredible achievements that might not necessarily be included in a history curriculum, as they should be. And we're also going to take a look at Felix Gonzalez Torres, who though primarily active a little bit later, his work is laying the foundations for exploring identity and loss in very subtle and poignant ways. We're going to take a look at the Guerrilla Girls, where they are emerging as this anonymous collective, advocating for gender and racial equity in art institutions, and very much emphasizing the reflection of the earlier struggles. Art itself is beginning to really expand its role. So artists are redefining the purpose of art. They're using it as a platform for activism and social commentary, and like actually giving themselves a voice. It's kind of that moment when we looked at, the Renaissance and even a little bit before, where artists felt like they are not just people creating things, but they have something to say about it as well. And so we're seeing a little bit more of that this time as well. We've got a little bit of intersectionality happening, which is highlighting this complexity of identity and showing how race, gender, and sexuality intersect to shape experiences. And so they have to be shown together. There is a sense of legacy happening as this period's focus on representation and identity continues to inspire contemporary artists like Wang-Chi Mutu, Glenn Lingon, Simone Lee, and Catherine Opie, who are building upon the foundational themes that earlier artists had established. And so this period of art history is really representing a very pivotal time frame when art is becoming a medium for advocating for change. And it really amplifies these marginalized voices, and it influences the ongoing dialogue about identity in contemporary artwork. So lots of really complex themes happening, lots of things to explore. I hope you enjoy it, and we've got one module left, folks, so I'll see you back here for 15. And then we're done with class. Bye, everyone.